Here in an episode of Chordplay. This is the Chords of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and I've had some requests to feature some of TSO's music. And Trans-Siberian Orchestra formed in Tampa, Florida in 1996 and was the brainchild of the late great producer Paul O'Neill. And he brought John Oliva and Al Petrelli from Savatage and combined them with Robert Kinkle, a keyboardist, and formed like the origin of Trans-Siberian Orchestra. As soon as TSO hit the scene, they were immediately popular, touring and their albums, and I think it just kind of struck a chord with a lot of rock and hard rock fans hearing this kind of hard rock or, electric guitar, rock and Christmas music. And they do a lot of, kind of classical themes, and they have, lots of vocalists, lots of drummers and bassists and keyboardists. I've worked with this group, and historically they've had some really monster guitarists in their lineup too. So here's an image with some of the guitarists that have played TSO over the years. Also, 2021 is the 25th anniversary of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and they just did a big round of touring, which I didn't get to see them this year, but I did have some friends that caught them this year, during their tour. And they do have an East Coast and a West Coast version of this band, so depending on where you live, you'll see a different lineup, but it's a lot of the same music. In this huge production, with lights, and sound, and everything. It's really a spectacle. So I've never seen them live, but I've seen lots of live footage of TSO in action. The music in this episode is primarily going to come from TSO's first album. There is one example from another album of theirs, and they've released like 6 or 7, different albums. But there is some Christmas music in this episode, and if you're not a big fan of Christmas music, I do apologize. But this is technically the closest we're going to get to a holiday or Christmas episode here. So we're going to be visiting, some familiar melodies and stuff like that. But there's some really interesting chords hiding in this lesson and some chord melody approaches, kind of bringing some of these Christmas themes and melodies to life. This episode also gives me a way to showcase my new guitar, which I did recently pick up this Breedlove Discovery Companion series. And this is a smaller, travel-size acoustic guitar, very affordable, but it's also a great playing, great sounding acoustic. And like I said, it's a travel size, so it's kind of smaller. And it's almost the exact same size as my electric guitars, as far as, just the way it feels. I can hold it a lot closer, almost like an electric. And I find myself playing this unlike an acoustic guitar. I'm almost kind of, shredding, so to speak, and playing lead and bending strings. And it sounds great. It's got a Fishman pickup built in with a tuner, and it's mahogany, But the best part is the price point. It was $399. So for $400, you can get a travel-sized acoustic guitar that feels and plays like an electric, which is great. With the opening, that's First Snow from TSO's first album, and it starts with acoustic and then moves toward electric, so I'm going to reproduce that here. But it opens with this. Right there, it kind of reminds me of Wait by White Lion, just a little bit, and it's different chords, but it does have that same kind of dreamy, ringing kind of sound. And we're starting with this D major kind of partial chord right there. And then it's moving to a A over D right there. So it's a partial, A major, but you have that D in the bass right there. And then you're going to move down, and now you're playing G over A. And you're going to move back up to that D over A. So we're just moving between, D, A over D, G over D, and then back to that A over D again. So it's very simple, but it does kind of create this, melodic, intro part for the song. after the intro part, the song moves to electric, and you have this. And it keeps going. But we're starting with these droned, kind of single notes against that open D. Think of like Shine by Collective Soul or some of those songs, and you're doing this. So right there, you're just moving from that open, the open D strings being played as a drone, but you're moving from that D to C sharp and eventually down to that B. And you're kind of playing this melodic, figure, but you're using an open D string as a drone like that. And right there, you're going to move to partial chords. So now it's a partial D right there. And then you're mimicking the intro. So it's D, and then A over D, to G over D. But instead of picking it like we did on the acoustic part, now you're banging that out. That D. And then the whole band comes in and it gets huge right there. Okay, next up is the song Christmas Eve, or I think it's actually Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224 or something like that. And it basically starts with an acoustic guitar, and you're just hearing this arpeggiated, chord, and it's creating this tonality, for the opening. And TSO does this, quite a bit, where they have just a single chord being picked or plucked, and it could be on guitar, or it could be on piano, or something else. But it starts like this. And just keeps going. And eventually you hear a cello. And it just keeps going. And it keeps going, after that. But that basically, it should sound and look familiar. So that's basically an E minor add 9, and we've had lots of E minor add 9 action, on this channel, or add 9 action, period. But right there, you're basically starting with that D string and then picking this reverse, arpeggio right there. And it has this haunting, mysterious sound. And that's where you hear the cello come in with the melody. So we're in E minor, and then that E minor add 9 is just creating that kind of chilling, tonality. Here's another example of this single chord kind of opening tonality, in TSO's music, and this is from Oh Holy Night, and it's something like this. Like that. And the low E is actually tuned all the way down to a C for this one, which is way down there. It's almost in tune. But that's basically a C add 9 and not the E minor add 9 we were playing with in the previous example, but just a C add 9 right there. And it basically starts with this, double pluck on the high E and the low E together, and then you're just arpeggiating that chord. Something like that. And you can definitely hear this kind of pick and finger-picked pluck, in a lot of TSO's acoustic moments. So I think this is actually Al Pitrelli, playing a lot of this acoustic stuff. And I think that's what he's doing. He's using the pick and fingers like that. Just something to think about. So here's another example of this intro chord tonality, in TSO's music, and this is from Midnight Clear, and it's really cool. This is actually tuned down a whole step, I think, on the actual recording of the album, and I just kept everything in standard tuning just to keep everything simple, for this lesson. But if you want to play along with the album, you're going to need to tune down a whole step, so just a heads up on that. But Midnight Clear is something like this. Something like that. And I love, parts like this where it's, part fretted notes and open strings mixed with harmonics, and you're creating these implied chords. But you're basically flirting with two different chords here. So there is a progression. It's more than just one chord. And the first chord is going to imply an E9. And then you hear the root note change to A, and then it changes to an A6-9 implied. So we're kind of playing with that sound. But we're doing it like this. So we're actually going to fret this F sharp there on the G string, and then pretty much everything else is either an open string or a harmonic like this. So grab the low E and then the B, and then you're going to play a 12th fret harmonic there on the high E string, and then you're going to grab that F sharp you're holding down on the G, and after you play that, then you're going to grab a 12th fret harmonic there on the B string. So very slowly, that's like this. Do that twice right there. And when you hit those harmonics, you're just going back to that F sharp like that. And then you hear that root note change to A and do the exact same thing. And then back to E. Back to A. Really cool stuff. I love when guitarists play with stuff like that. It's very unexpected, and it sounds, really interesting, and it just, piques your attention where you're like, hey, what was that? Okay, up next we have God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, and here we have a traditional Christmas song turned into a chord melody workout like this. One more time there. Right there, we're basically starting with E minor, and we're going to be moving between E minor and B7 a lot in this, example. And we're starting with E minor here, and it's really just an E5. And then you're moving up to this B major partial. So you're doing this. Grab that open B string, and then you're grabbing that. Then grab that single A right there on the high E string. Like this. And then right here, it's totally a Bach kind of thing, this counterpoint movement. And I'm going to go really slow here. So we're going from there to here, this partial C. And we're moving down like that. That's tricky, that's really tricky. And we're also doing this pick and finger kind of combination right there. And then you want to go back up to that C, that partial B, back to that E minor, then right there, it's like a A over C sharp, and then it's basically a B over D sharp right there at the end. So that's really tricky, like. And that last chord is a stretch right there. So if you're looking for these kind of Bach-esque, parts, there's a great one right there. And I'm a sucker for working on parts like that. It's almost like a puzzle or a mind game where you have to sit there and really work that out. And in the second pass, that part's really tricky, but it's really cool. So we're starting with E minor right there, and then you're moving down to D sharp, and then D natural, and then down to that C sharp there, and then you're moving, back to B7 right there. So one more time really slow. Really cool. And when you put all that together, you got the Bach kind of counterpoint, you've got the melody from the song. It really delivers this really different, flavor, which it's a Christmas song, but it really comes to life, in its own way on guitar like that. Next up is the silent Nutcracker, which that sounds like something the bullies in high school used to do, this silent Nutcracker. But this is also supposed to be tuned down a whole step, but I'm just going to do it in standard. But something like this, and it's really cool. And then it repeats again. So we're basically starting with this partial, G, like a G5, and then a partial E minor, and then a partial B minor. So we're really just kind of walking between these partial chords, partial G5, E minor, B minor, back to that E minor again. So like this. And then do that again. And then we're going to walk down like this. And then, so right there, it's like a partial C. And then right there, and then it's like a partial G with the open strings right there, the D, the G, and the B strings open. Right? Like this. And then right there. Like what we had earlier with that partial C. So right there you've got, and then right there, and then when you move back to that, there's a lot of partial chords happening right there. So that partial C, it's like a partial A to that D5 right there at the end. So that's pretty involved, and it's kind of hard to just, soak that up and notice, what I was doing there just off the fly. Chord melody, parts like that are really hard because you're playing the melody and all these partial chords together. So that'd probably be a lot easier to see written, than just to see somebody playing it. One more time there, kind of slow. Time, kind of more up to speed. Really cool, and I love parts like that where you can kind of bring these melodies to life. The last example's from the First Noel, and this is also supposed to be tuned down a whole step like it was on the album, but I'm just going to demonstrate and show this in standard tuning. And it also uses a pure, finger style or finger picking technique. Something like this. So once again, it's all implied chords, partial chords, and this chord melody, kind of adding partial chords to, the melodic part of the song. So it starts with this. So that high E open, and then the G and the high E to that D note there on the B string, and then to go to like a partial C, and then you're moving to this partial G7 right there, where you're grabbing that B note with the high E, and then you're moving to a partial E minor, and then you're going to grab this. So that, F and A moved up to that G and B right there. Like you're moving thirds, but it's spaced, an over an octave apart. Alright, so right there. And you're going to move up a little higher, and you're grabbing this. Moving back to E minor, and then this little piece of A minor right there. So it's really interesting the way all those, partial chords and pieces, bring out the sound of that melody, but it also sounds really full, almost like what you'd hear somebody play on a piano, but you're hearing that on guitar. Alright, that's going to wrap this look at the Chords of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and definitely, like I said earlier, I had some requests to feature some of their music, and the holidays were rapidly approaching, and I just kind of felt this lesson where I thought, okay, this, like I said earlier, this is probably the closest we're going to get to a Christmas episode or a holiday, episode here on the channel, but I was kind of feeling some of the music, and I thought just the, guitarists that have worked with this band and toured with this band, Alex Skolnick and some of those players, Al Petrelli, of course, Joe Hoekstra and some of these players, just monster guitarists playing very familiar, Christmas music and holiday music, but it's rocking, but then I did feature a lot of these kind of quieter and acoustic moments and this chord melody kind of stuff, and I'm a big fan of that. It's really hard to play, and it's really hard to learn, but once you start tapping into some of those ideas, it's really infectious, where you're like, well, I want to do this again with another song, or you might hear a song on the radio and think, hey, what would that sound like if it was just, all solo guitar or whatever? So something to think about. All right, I hope everybody has a happy holidays, and leave some feedback and comments, and subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.